All right, good morning, everyone. I hope you survived last night. I'm very grateful for you being here this morning, despite the state of last night. So you can be proud. I think you're like the hardcore fans, so to speak. Now, I titled my talk The Haxe Identity because I want to talk a little bit about what I think that is from an outsider's perspective. Now, some of you may know I'm not a programmer. I guess I can say that Haxe has literally changed my life. I've just never used it. So I came here with Simon on our first trip to Paris a couple of years back in 2014. And at the time, I didn't know anything about programming. I was pursuing a degree in mathematics and English at the university. But I hadn't gotten to the programming part yet, but I was very curious about what Simon was actually doing. I could explain it in very easy terms, as in like I knew what a compiler was, which to the very surprise of my boss was more than most people know, apparently. So I knew what a compiler was, I knew what Haxe was, but I didn't really know about all the things it could do. And so I stayed in Paris and listened to the talks, and what I found was that even though it was very technical sometimes, there's always some sort of like story element to all of them. So I kind of managed to find something I could relate to in every talk. And the other thing that I was very surprised by was that the Haxe community was very, very welcoming. So everyone was really happy to talk to me and really happy to tell me what they were doing with Haxe and how it would impact their business and what was so great about it. And so that helped me a lot to get a feel for the community. It also had this weird side effect of after one day and a half or so, I had talked to everyone there. I basically knew what everyone was doing. And then I kind of started matchmaking. Yeah. So there was these situations where someone would tell me, well, I'm doing XYZ. And I was like, oh, yeah, this other guy is doing this other thing. And maybe you should talk because maybe that has something to do with each other. And that just kept on going somehow. So this is how I ended up here. And at the same time, in my day job, I work in a web agency. So they do websites and online shops with PHP. I know that's supposed to be a bad thing. I can't really judge. But at the same time, I was asked at my job to basically learn more about online marketing and SEO and also data science, actually. So in a kind of funny way, what I was doing on the Haxe side and what I was doing on the professional side was kind of like feeding off each other. Right, so I was learning things here that I could use in my job, and I was learning things on my job that I then kind of went to experiment on here or on the Haxe website or with the Haxe blog or with the community. So there's like a lot of cross compilation going on there somehow. In that led to a lot of, I would say, personal progress on my part, where I really started to figuring out this whole online strategy thing, this how to talk to people, how to talk about things. And I remember when I started SEO back in the day, I was always super frustrated because I never actually got to talk to the client. I would always get some instructions from my boss filtered through 5 different people in between, and then I would have to come up somehow with a strategy for that, as if that was something that just like drops from the sky, right? And I realized very soon that in order to be able to come up with a strategy for something or someone, anything, I needed to understand who they are, like what it is that they do and what it is that they want. And there needs to be like a little bit of clarity. And I had this conversation with my boss once where he was like, you know, you don't have to make this whole psychological thing every time. Like, this is not therapy. And I'm, yes, it is. You know, like if I am to help you reach a goal, like we need to at least kind of figure out what it is, you know? I mean, it doesn't have to be metaphysical, but you should know sort of what you're doing. So I started to get more into who people are, and that led to kind of this way of understanding the identity of a business or a person. And in terms of Haxe, I think that the biggest advantage of Haxe, but also the biggest caveat, so to speak, is that it does so many things for so many people, right? It's this incredible thing that does incredible things for incredible people incredibly well. Now, that sounds good on paper, but at the same time, it's very hard to communicate, because when I'm talking to you, you don't care about all the other people that it solves amazing problem for. You care about your problem, and can that help you with your problem? And in order for me to communicate that to you, I kind of need to know what that problem is. So it's not an easy sell on a broad spectrum level, right? You can't sell it to everyone with some sort of blanket feature list. This is what it does. It doesn't work that way, and people don't care about features anywhere. So in the end, it's about what can it do for me? What is the value that it adds for me? And in terms of like how things work in the community, this is a strength, because it brings together this very diverse community, where if you're open to it, you can learn from a lot of different people who do incredibly smart things and in different areas than you do, right? Some stuff you've never heard about, or you didn't even know it was possible, and then suddenly you think, oh, this could be interesting, right? Like this could help me. But at the same time, in terms of bringing Haxe forward or deciding where it goes, Haxe is this lowest common denominator between what all of you want, right? So whenever you actually want something, you kind of have to make sure, and we as a compiler team also have to make sure that what you want actually applies to everyone and not just to your problem, because we want Haxe to stay this common denominator that can do lots of things for everyone, and not it can do some things for someone at the cost of not doing things for other people. So while sometimes it's frustrating not to get what you want, you also kind of need to reflect on whether it is something that only you want, or whether it's something that could possibly benefit everyone. And if you get to the conclusion that it could benefit everyone, you need to also think about how to make it workable for everyone, right? Because we're fairly happy to make progress when we know what exactly it is, down to the level of, I think this API thing should be implemented this way because that's the standard in this and this and this and that other thing. So it's hard to reduce this to the core message. Now, the other thing that I see is that it feels sometimes like 5 or 6 years ago, everyone looked into a mirror and kind of was like, okay, this is Haxe and I'm a Haxe developer. So you all looked into a mirror. And since then, you kind of like never bothered to look again. So you're still stuck on this same self-image that you had 5 years ago, where there was a lot of stuff still to do on the compiler. There was a lot of stuff to do on the language. The community was way smaller, and you're kind of sometimes still in that same way that you communicated back then. You still feel that way. You still feel so small, and you still feel like this is such an underdog thing, and all the frustration of like, nobody is really noticing me, and you know, I can't really convince anyone, and if only there were more use cases, and if only there were more people using it. I mean, guess what? Look around. There are more use cases. There are more people using it. There is a lot of progress everywhere. Then the other problem that we've had was this, oh, it's just something for indie games. I mean, it is still used a lot for games. Of course, that's where it came from. But I mean, look at the games. Like, look at the stuff that's going on there. It's something to be so incredibly proud of. It's not something to say like, yeah, it's just games. No, it's games, exclamation point, amazing shit, right? That's what it is. And there is a lot of growth happening everywhere. So like, just make sure you look into the mirror and update your self-image regularly, because in the end, Haxe is very steady in terms of progress. Like, there aren't any exponential things, there aren't any exponential leaps, but in the 4 years I've been watching it, I've never seen anyone go backwards. I've never seen anything like radically fail or progress being lost. There is consistent progress, and it is never about perfection. Haxe will never be perfect. The community will never be perfect. It's about progress, and it's about really sticking to that progress. Okay, let's have a break. Yeah. So in a sense, I think that the biggest asset to the Haxe community, or the thing that is going to make the biggest difference, is actually you guys, right? Like the biggest thing, that what makes this community, or what makes the language work, what makes the technology work, what brings in new people, is not any one feature that we can put into the compiler or the language. It's actually you. Like there is this paradigm in marketing where you say you only need 1,000 true followers. You only need like 1,000 people to really care about what you do and talk about it all the time. You don't need 50,000 Facebook followers. You don't need 50,000 people on YouTube or 1 million Instagram followers. You need 1,000 people, really good people, who are willing to talk about what you care about, or who actually care just as much as you do. And so in a sense, like if you're looking for Haxe advocacy, if you're looking for our marketing plan, if you're looking for what we're going to do, like just look right next to you, right? That's you who's going to make the difference. There is nothing that we can fix in the compiler that's going to have as great as an impact as any one of you getting into their Haxe state and just going out there and talking about it. Now, I've heard a lot of concerns about like, what can we do? I'm afraid to talk about this. Like, how do I talk about it? I don't know. And I think at some point you have to kind of look at yourself. Like, you chose this technology, not based on what it would be in 5 years. You chose it based on what it is right now. Like right now, you think it's a good choice. So you need to believe in that choice. You can't kind of be like, it's a good choice, but I know it's missing all these things. And like, and when you go to talk to someone, like if you go in like that, you know, like, I know it's missing X, Y, Z, but I also think it's a really good idea. It doesn't work that way. Because if you are able to make the choice based on what it is there right now, other people who actually we would be interested in welcoming into our community should be too. And anyone who doesn't get it, yes, maybe there is some information missing. Maybe we can do better in kind of like welcoming or communicating. But at the same time, you made it, right? So, I mean, there is this, it is a two-way thing, sort of. And the other thing is, I've heard from you, for example, yesterday that sometimes when you talk to management, they look up Haxe and there is the website and then there isn't much talk about it. I mean, I can talk about it every day. That is not going to make as much of an impact as each one of you talking about it once a year, right? So really get okay with your choice and be vocal about it. Share it. You know, talk about it. I'm not saying you have to write 5 blog posts. I'm saying, you know, if you meet a developer friend, talk to them about it. Just, you know, hey, I've got this thing. It's working really great for me. And maybe they'll be, yes, hoorah, like, yes, it's all I ever wanted. Probably not, you know, but then they've heard of it and they will keep hearing of it. And at some point it'll be like, yeah, something I've heard of it, you know, it's like the hearing thing comes from you. You are the guys who need to talk about it so that someone can hear about it. There is only so much we as a Haxe Foundation or as an external person can and actually want and should do, right? So you need to kind of, fix your inner narrative and get behind this choice. This is really personal growthy, but it actually works that way, I promise. And then when you've kind of okay with that, then just go and talk about it, right? Like, it's really this thing where I always joke that programming language or talk about programming language, at a certain point it gets a little bit religious, right? Like there is this it starts off really reasonable, where everyone is like, I like XYZ and it has these nice features and stuff. And then suddenly something happens and they're like, but I just like it better. Or I just feel that this is better. And you're like, yeah, that's how religion is, right? And if you think about in terms of like tech talk, we talk about evangelists. That's a religious metaphor right there. That's, and if you think about what an evangelist is, it's not an outside person that comes in, looks at the community or looks at the religion or the church or whatever you want to call it. It's not an outside person that comes, looks, and basically goes like, oh, let me evangelize this. Like an evangelist is someone who rises from within the community and goes out to talk about what they are passionate about and what they believe in. Now, for myself, I actually try to do it the way I introduce myself at parties, which is I have this formula where I think, okay, I'm Josefiene, yeah, and then I solve XYZ problem for people of the type ABC. And I interchange XYZ and ABC depending on where I am. So if I'm talking to a very technical person, I can say I am a digital analyst and I implement complex measurement plans for business goals for my clients. And they will understand that. If I tell that to my clients, they have no clue what I'm doing, right? Like to my clients, I say, well, if you can't find yourself on Google, you should better talk to me, right? So that's describing what I do. So and with Haxe, it's the same thing. If you go to speak to someone about it, don't think about what it does for you. Don't think about the features. Think about what specifically it can do for them. And for that, you have to kind of go out and meet them first, right? And yeah, so that's it. Go out and talk about it. Tweet about it right now. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to say. Also, you're all awesome. I love you very much. I'm just very grateful. It's like my first plan was just to stand here and basically do the girl thing and be like, you're all amazing. I really love you. Like I really do. So I hope that we can kind of address this problem a little bit more and be a little bit more vocal and a little bit more connective, because in the end, it's really you guys that are gonna bring this forward. Like there isn't anything, like it's good right now, it's not perfect, but there isn't anything that we can put in the compiler that's gonna replace anything you can do. So that's that.